Hello there, folks, and my name's Scott Taylor. And for a while now, I've been collecting true life horror stories, if you will, creepy stories from my past friends and family and people I know. And I was going to start a new podcast telling these stories. But during this time of quarantine, when we're all stuck indoors with little to do apart from get grumpy with our families and friends, I thought I'd record a few videos telling a story here and there to see what you think, just to give you a smile or perhaps a shiver down your spine. And for example, this story here is a story from my past, from 1988. I was 13 years old at the time, growing up in a town called Thurso, located in the far north of Scotland. I was a relatively quiet kid, growing up taller and broader than most of my friends and dealing with a stammer that I battled with all throughout my younger days. Things at home weren't ideal either. My parents divorced when I was barely out of nappies. My mother was left to not only raise three kids, my brother and sister coming from another relationship she had, but also her own demons that plagued her, leaving her distant and dismissive of us as children. Because of this, I was pretty much left to my own devices, allowed to pretty much come and go as I pleased from a young age, as long as I didn't bring any trouble to the door or come home bleeding or missing any part of my anatomy. Of course, being a young man by this point with a raging sense of Indiana Jones fueled adventure, I'd often slip out my bedroom window late at night and head to a friend's house or just wander around the streets, appreciating how quiet and still everything was. Back then, there was very little concern about kids being in danger. We lived in a relatively small community, and everyone pretty much knew everyone else's business. And after the streetlights came on, there was usually very little in the way of traffic moving around the town that wasn't out of the ordinary. One of the things I loved doing on a clear night was to climb out of my window and cross over the fence, leading onto a small footpath that ran along the back of my house. There, a few feet ahead of me, there was a 3-foot tall ledge that I would climb up on before leaning onto the loose brick wall that separated our estate from the miles of morse bushes that lay ahead of us. On a nice enough night, and if the moon was in the right position, the morse lamp would almost glow under the light blue gaze shining down upon it. And it was easy to lose myself in my thoughts for a while before climbing back down off that ledge and making my way back over the fence and in back through the bedroom window. It was midsummer, and I'd been up late in my room, probably reading or watching something on my small black and white portable TV. I don't quite remember, but I remember it getting late and me still feeling wide awake. So I decided I would climb out the window and go see my friend Robert, who lived nearby. His parents didn't mind me arriving late to visit. They knew how things were at home, and for me, and with my mother having the difficulties that she did, it wasn't unexpected for me to arrive at their home around midnight for an hour or so. Luckily for me, they were also night owls. I pulled on my shoes and moved to the window and pulled open my curtains, only to freeze where I stood. As I looked across my garden fence towards the brick wall and the wide ledge, there, standing in the spot I usually took when I snuck out, was a tall, dark figure. I pulled the curtains together quietly and peeked through a small gap to see what they were doing. The moon shone bright in the sky and across the moor, bright enough that I could only see this person in silhouette. It looked like they were standing with their hands stuffed in the pockets of a long jacket that seemed to fall down to just above their knees. I could make out that they were wearing a baseball cap of some description, possibly on backwards, but it was hard to tell for sure. The bright moonlight behind them wouldn't let me make any details for certain. Suddenly, a neighbour must have clicked on a light at a bathroom or a bedroom light, throwing a dull light across the path and across the figure by the wall. This allowed me to just make out as I squinted at the perfectly still figure standing about 14 feet away from my window, that they weren't standing facing the moorland like I frequently did. They were instead standing stock still and facing towards me. I jumped back from the window, allowing the curtains to fall back and block out the view of the stranger outside. I scrambled over my bed and turned off the lamp, throwing the room into darkness apart from the moonlit glow that shone through the light cream-coloured material of my curtains. I stayed low to the floor and scrambled across to the open cupboard at the rear end of my room, climbing inside it and huddling under an old jacket as I stared wide-eyed at the window. I lay there for what felt like ages, cold and terrified, watching for any movement at all at my window. Nothing happened, so I decided to get to my feet and get out of that room and wake my mum to let her know what I saw. Just as I turned to my right to leave the room, something caught my eye and I spun towards the window. There, outlined by the light of the full moon against the curtains, was a shadow of a figure, standing completely still on the other side of the glass. I fell to the floor and yelled, scrabbling for the handle of the door to get out of the room. However, being a teenage boy who not only appreciated his privacy, but also had a habit of sneaking out the house late at night, I'd fitted a sliding bolt to the door at head height that was stopping me from pulling the door open. I clambered up the door and reached for the bolt, looking back around at the curtains to see that not only was the dark figure still standing right outside, but now had a hand pressed up against the glass, fingers spread out with her palm flat against the window. I froze in place, too terrified to move and slide open the bolt holding my door shut, just as the hand on the window closed into a fist and slowly thumped twice against the glass. I managed to move and tore open the bolt just as the figure swiftly darted to the right, moving out of sight of the window and towards the front of the house. Knowing that whoever this was would have a clear view through the living room windows at me as I left the room, I shut the door over again and lay against it. I'd never been so scared, and I lay on the floor by my door, staring wide-eyed at my bedroom window until dawn and the sun came up. Shattered, I fell into bed and managed a couple of hours of restless sleep before getting up to tell my mother what had happened. She called the police, but there was very little they could do. There were footprints in the mud outside my window that didn't match any tread on any of my shoes. But other than that, there was no evidence at all that anyone had been there. The window was checked for any prints from the stranger's hand, but the officers claimed that whoever it was must have been wearing gloves, as there was nothing there to be found. I think my mother and the police chalked it down to me probably having a vivid dream, and my mother apologised to them for wasting their time before they left. We never talked about it again. I knew my mum didn't believe me no matter how much I insisted I'd been awake the whole time, so it was soon forgotten as we moved on with our lives. But after that night, I never again snuck out after dark to stand at that wall and look out over the moorland across from my house, just in case I had some unexpected company. Thank you for listening to this story. The first story from this podcast or video series, whatever it's going to be, that I think I might call the Quarantine Tales, since we're all tied to our homes for now. Hope you all take care. See you again soon. If you like this, leave a like or a comment, and let me know if you want to hear any more. If you have any stories that you would like me to read out on this show, please feel free to email me. You can email me at scott@dhbradio.com. I'll put the email address on the screen here, scott@dhbradio.com. Good night, stay safe, and don't go out for a walk.